All right. Welcome to the Moat, where we break down real business decisions and the problems behind them. I'm Sam Robinson,
And I'm Kyle Harbaugh.
and every week we find real businesses, real numbers, and real stakes and show you how to build a business competitors can't easily copy, take, or kill.
And we're not here to just talk about the news. We're here to break down real stories so that you can better understand how it applies to your business. So you can use your these lessons to build your business in a better way, in a healthier way, in a more valuable way. And so, Sam, let's build another layer of that moat.
All right, let's build it.
So, Sam, my opening question for today is if AI could do 80% of your daily work tomorrow, what would people still pay you for?
It's a great question. And in fact, people are, companies and venture capital firms are actually betting on this with billions of dollars. Um, this actually comes down to a question that I asked during a live session with some of these guys building data centers and infrastructure. And the question I ask is like, how do we monetize and commoditize the information and what we're doing here today? They got very squeamish in their seats, and this is information that they don't like to give up. But the reality is this specialized intelligence. You have your general level of intelligence or your general information that you're used to working with, and those used to be the phone calls that you would make to your buddy that you're like, okay, well, everything I have is specialized, and I've got these layers of like, okay, this is something beginner can do, but when you get to here, this is going to be pretty tough. Um, and that's really the specialized intelligence, that top cream, is what they eventually want to aim for, and that's where you can really commoditize. But if I could do 70 to 80% of the work, that's assuming that it's able to operate on 100% of the information, and that's never the case. And so, I operate as much as I possibly can on AI, but the reality is that like AI is a tool to understand where it should go, not where it needs to go. So if you say, hey, drop everything that you're telling me right now and make me a recipe for cupcakes, like I've actually seen a couple people do for like these online chatbots or for orders. There was a famous one with Chipotle recently, a guy literally doing that same thing, and it's like, oh, thanks for the cupcakes order. It's like, well, did you want to place your order for Chick-fil-A or for Chipotle, but he had broken it and you could use it for free, the AI for free. So if you could replace 80% of your workload, all the more power to you. But you got to have it in an infrastructure that makes sense for your business. Throwing the information in there is not going to be helpful. Understanding where you want the information to go is like the next step. But like what you want as your final result is really tough for a lot of people because it's like, well, I wanted some information, but I didn't want that information. Well, you should have explained it better because the words that you chose had a real impact on what you could do. So if you could cut 80% of it, um, all the more power to you. But I would say you're not cutting, you're really multiplying. If
Hmm.
I'm able to get 3, 4, 5, 10, 20x done than compared to where I was before, then that's something realistic. And I've got many AI tools that I literally run. I might be running 4, 5, 6, 7 things at the same time. And you're really becoming someone like a conductor at an orchestra, and I'm like, okay, that one's not doing what it needs to do. That one needs to do this, and you're really turning into that.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, the conductor analogy, and keeping the quality high, and so you're getting the right information. You're getting it where it's not too much information, it's not enough information. It's finding that kind of that Goldilocks sweet spot is really really important. And so, just because you're using AI doesn't mean you're actually doing it right. You could actually be creating more work for yourself because it's producing something wrong. It's going in the wrong direction. It's not you're not specific enough to lead it well and have it understand the task that you need it to tackle. So
Or
um,
deleting your entire database and all the information that you spent years collecting. Like I've seen people do. It's like, no, I don't want that. Delete it. Okay, deleting the entire database. It's like, wait, what? And these are stories that I see reoccurring too.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, we've seen so many different instances where AI has gone off the rails, and that's why people are afraid of it. People are hesitant to use it. I understand that. At the same time, if you have good guardrails in place, if you know how these tools are working, it can be very, very powerful and really allow you to do more and speed up those repetitive tasks that don't maybe take a lot of time, but well, they take up a lot of time together. They add up to something significant, and they might not take a lot of brain power, but they are something that needs to get done on a regular basis.
Exactly.
So, on that subject, let's talk about CVC. CVC is this private equity mega fund. They recently sold, I want to say this name right, Scroots. Scroots, which is a Greek, it's kind of like a Greek Amazon. So think about Amazon. They have like storage lockers where you can pick up your parcel. It's for e-commerce. Scroots was recently sold by CVC for a lot of money, 760, excuse me, $746 million. They sold it to BlackRock, and this fund that they created was normally they would buy a company, acquire a company, have it sit, work with that company for, in this case, they worked with them for 6 years, and then they would hire investment bankers to provide a data room, to provide financial forecasts, to provide all the different information that would be needed so that they could be sold. And in this case, they didn't hire an investment banker; they employed AI to do it. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, let's. I would love to hear what your take is on this situation.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You know, so this is actually something I investigated myself. And I originally, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, it's SK Routes. But anyway, they are Greece. So anyway, long story short, when you look at a process that you have done very traditionally and honed over many years across a large industry,
Yeah.
and you expect to take all the knowledge that you have and be able to use, amplify, and do it just as efficiently and effectively within a year or two, but for a completely different process, you're cruising for a bruising. Now, I will say, you know, again, I'm not able to use their model, but from what I could tell, they were at best 80% accurate, which means that with these kind of things, when you're going and buying and selling and everything is very messy. You need a very structured process to make sure that you are doing everything in your power to cover the due diligence for these types of businesses.
Yep.
And how do you do that? Well, so like for instance, we have reports, we have custom ways in which we look at literally thousands of things in minute detail very quickly and making sure that we're covering all of our bases. They're not doing that. They're using what's called a chunking method. And so they chunk the information in there, throw it to an LLM, and then the LLM is working through that. And then they wonder why it's like, well, we've got most of our information. But then they end up having to say that, well, we used AI to do this, and then they have to go and cover their butt by having everyone else do it the traditional way all over again.
Mm.
So, what I would say is that with AI, you've got to have your pipeline down right. You've got to have the infrastructure right. It's got to operate correctly. And so if you're like, well, I'll just throw it into AI and I'll hope for the best. Well, the thing is that, if you're throwing all of your information in all at once. So let's say I have a huge paper and top to bottom, it's 100% of that I just threw it in. Well, what if you need information at the 10% mark, the 50% mark, and the 90% mark? Well, the reality is that when AI looks at your information, and especially as it gets longer, so if you're over like 64K context windows, most people are looking at like literally a million as a context window. You
Mhm.
get what this thing is called a U shape, and the U shape is the and think of it like staring into a murky pond. Uh, to be able to see the bottom in a murky pond is near impossible, and that's what
Yeah.
you're asking the large language model to do. So you can only see what's on the shores,
Right.
and
You see
that's
on the
not enough
edges.
indicator. Yeah, you
Right.
can only see the edges, you can't see the middle, and that's exactly how it works with these large language models. And so you end up having to you have all these other techniques to try to cut and figure that out, and it's like, well, instead of doing this big long thing, we'll do it in chunks. Well, okay, I'll do it here, 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 here. Well, you still have blind spots in those U's.
Mm.
And so you have, shallower depth that you have to deal with, but you have many things spread apart. And then trying to piece that back together is near impossible. And
Mm.
so which is why we built what we built. So for consulting, so we could just get it done, be done with it. And then there's also like tons of other different ways to do it, like embedding models, which is, I think, okay, but it gets the job done, but it's not great. It just says, this is generally what you want. And it's like, well, no, I need a specific detail. Please provide the specific detail. Then you have to reprompt it. And so you end up becoming the person that has to go and find the information anyway. So
Mm.
it's very much like a delivery service, like trying on clothes that you didn't go to the store to get fitted for. You don't know what your fit is, so you're guessing. So you're going to have to order it, wait for it, and then send it back potentially, and then wait for it again, and then you kind of have this
This back and
vicious
forth
loop.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really what most of these companies are dealing with right now, and they haven't figured out the infrastructure because they're using traditional AI methods, and they're expecting their older traditional regular methods to work with traditional AI methods, and both are incompatible.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is they're like, okay, well, this murky pond, we have all the data and we can see the shore that's close to us and we can see like what's on the other side, but the middle is problematic. So let's make a bunch of little ponds and then it won't be as deep and we can process this data through a bunch of little ponds and while that might be a better approach, there's still wiggle room. There's still inaccuracy. There's still the data is still not being handled the best. And so, based on your research, they left out some key details that could really have affected the deal. That's interesting.
Correct. Yeah. So I call it the net approach. So the net approach is where um, uh, I'm not going to tell you the exact process, but I will say
Yeah.
using the pond approach. So, like, let's say for instance, you're looking for fish, right? And you're looking for a specific type of fish in the pond. You don't want to hurt all the fish, and you don't want to mess up your data. So, what you end up doing is literally casting a net, finding exactly where those fish are, and but you end up pulling them all in as a copy of that, and say, okay, I don't need these fish, and then you only have those fish, and then you redraw the context of where they're at. So you use both the original and the copy combined,
Oh.
in a very much a net approach, which is actually very useful. But at the end of the day, it takes more time, it takes more resources to find that, but you end up cutting a lot of that, a lot of the errors out of the process.
Got it.
Hmm.
Interesting. So, okay, so I'm hearing that this language model, they applied this approach. They at least got the job,
Hmm.
done. They got the deal across the finish line. But like, I'm curious, what kind of language model did they use? I mean, one of the big things that I continually come back to is these models, these big models are, public. They're training on your data, and the fact that put in specialized information, now you're giving that up. You're giving up that know-how that was part of your moat. Now you're giving up part of your moat to process this data, maybe faster, but there's pros and cons there. So, what kind of model did they use, or what kind of infrastructure did they use to process the data?
Yeah. So I just double check. I wanted to double check my answer here because I knew they used some Claude and some GPT. So from what I could understand from the CEO and what I'm seeing reported here, um, and it's basically an unconventional exit. I completely agree with that. Um, and the team utilized a mix of large language models, like we talked about, which is specifically GPT 5.3 for heavy lifting tasks and GPT 5.5 along. And again, when this was out, the new ChatGPT was newest ChatGPT was not out. So 5.5, and then along with Opus 4.8 for details and design of that. Um, it's interesting. We're seeing on a larger scale, the big thing that I'm seeing right now emergent on the AI side is saying is the emergence of specialized models.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Specialized models saying, okay, I have this type of information, and we're going to see the orchestration for all these different models. And we're going to see those come up. But that introduces an entirely different issue. Is and because not every single one fishes in the same pond or can see every single piece of that pond. So maybe you only see 90% of that pond and you're missing 10% of it. And the other part, sees the other 10% or 5%. You have either a chunk fully missing or it's disparate, meaning that there's pieces that other pieces that you had already found that are missing, they're not worked on. And so others are trying to find these models to try again, kind of as a net, but more of it's a very expensive net. So it's like, well, let's just drain the lake and just get rid of everything, and we'll just hope for the best. Or we'll just put a bunch of fishermen out there to do the fishing, and we'll just pay them by the hour. Um, and so again, I'm just trying to use the same examples. They're not. It's a square peg in a round hole for these some of these examples, but what I will say is that they're using more of a sophisticated orchestration between which is basically multiple models saying, hey, this model does this model does this, we'll only use it for this and this.
Right.
And honestly, it's not bad. It's better than just hoping for the best and praying that the LLM overlords are going to do a good enough job. But the thing is that at the end of the day, OpenAI in Claude, in this case, now has their data and the
Yeah.
questions that they're asking about and information about the deal. And guess what? If all of a sudden a new model gets trained on that and they're not paying attention, or someone had the switch turned on, even if they had a business agreement, you have that information turned on, it gets sent to their model and they're using it. Well, too bad. Now you've got, if you had an NDA or some other things, compliance that you had to, say, well, we're not going to use this. And we don't want you to know the information. Someone put that in AI and it got trained. Well, guess what? me or whoever, some random guy on the side of the street that has a Claude subscription and access to the model can go and ask that question and potentially get that information that you literally
Right.
put in there. That's just the reality of the game that we're playing now.
Yeah, and that's crazy. But you bring up some good points. Like, I think one of the things that stood out to me in this article was that traditionally there's all this data fielding that investment bankers, all these investment analysts would field a bunch of information for investors and all the parties involved, and so instead of having those analysts who we got to pay a lot field all this information, we can have AI do that. And I like the idea of cutting out like if we don't need specialized expertise to provide the data, it's just a matter of like sending emails or
Hmm.
other things. Like I like the idea of if it doesn't take a lot of brain power, like let's hand that to AI. I mean, a big part of the deal is the relationships and and if we can if we can focus on the relationship side of things, the judgment side of things, and do less of the busy work, the fielding of information, sending of emails, providing this document in the data room or whatever it might be, that's far more valuable to really free people up to do their best work where they have specialized knowledge that is needed to make the deal happen. So in theory, I like some of this, and I think it's a very interesting case study for sure. At the same time, how you handle that data is really important too, and it sounds like they may have
Correct.
not handled it properly.
Um, the reality is that most of these businesses are not handling it properly. It's actually, I'm actually seeing this emergent on, well, it's not emergent anymore, but it was, but now it's a real serious problem. Is like the amount of security. It's like and the amount of pings, the amount of times that basically people are using AI to go and try to crack these enterprises has skyrocketed because it's cheap. You go and set up a few things, you hit a button. Um, Maybe you download a large language model from the black web, from the dark web, and you say, okay, well, I'm just going to do blah 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 blah, and you type it in, and all of a sudden it goes out, and it can go and do all sorts of crazy stuff to build. And then we're like, all right, cool. Now we're going to go and attack, and you got the rise of much higher rise of ransomware now. So they don't really care. We'll just sell it off to whoever in the dark web. And so there's a real security issue there, especially putting all of your stuff out there. So there needs to be some very large measures taken on the security side.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, makes total sense, and yeah, now people can do more with less if they know what they're doing. I think for the moat lesson here, what really stood out to me is if your competitive advantage can be eroded by technology, by software automation, your moat's getting smaller. You're in danger, and you need to understand where you need to pivot in order to keep your moat.
Hmm.
I will also say though, if your moat is around relationships, trust, helping people make better decisions, having judgment about what the data is telling us, your moat actually might be getting stronger because now you can do more with the technology that we have these days. So it doesn't necessarily eliminate expertise; it raises the value of judgment.
Yeah, and I do think it not only raises the value of judgment, but it also allows you to use your specialized intelligence in ways that you didn't think were possible. Especially for like other areas of general intelligence that you're like, well, I don't have the time to learn that. And it's like, well, what if I, what if I wasn't classically trained to be able to play like Spanish guitar? Like I did that at one point in time because I thought it was fun. But like, now you can go and be creative with it and be like, well, what is, M&A? I can ask crazy questions now and actually find things that I would have never found. So I could say, well, what is buying a business, exiting, and M&A have to do with Spanish guitar? And like me playing, I can ask those questions now. These are questions that you can ask, and I think people need to realize that there's not just one path. You can take a lot of different paths to be able to be creative, because AI is literally just taking your words, measuring it against the structure and math that's behind it, and saying, okay, this is the field of view that we have. These are the different things that we can go ahead and pull, and we can go ahead and blend these things together. So I have ways creatively that I can go and blend two, three, four different things. But that said, data sovereignty, which is what we're talking about, and data security for that sovereignty is going to become, I would say, probably the flagship issue. Those two main things combined as one, the flagship issue in 2027. That's really where I'm seeing. Now, I've also said in a prior show, I also mentioned about like the orchestration
Hmm.
of these different models, and actually the use of specialized intelligence. And this is an expanded piece on the thing that I had mentioned before. And when I say one large thing, I think of it as many subsections that I just don't have the time for. I consider this a subsection of orchestrated intelligence and how you're actually using that. But security is going to be one of those big issues there, most certainly. And then on that same note, for those that don't know, we also do have an offline way to be able to take your business and be able to use very strong AI for your own business. So if this is something that is interesting for you, that you do want to have and say, hey, I don't want someone else to have my data, and I also know that the cost of this information is going to 10x here in the next 2 years. If you're not aware of it, they're already talking about it. And you can already see the cost of the models creeping upwards as well as they're releasing new ones, because now they can justify, well, it's an old model, and we don't want you to have access to the old models. You only want the new ones, and we're going to charge more for that.
Right.
Well, and that's their current positioning to be able to get more revenue. Well, that may not align with how your what the information you have or how you built your infrastructure, and so that can really throw a wrench in the actual intelligence that you're using in your business too. So a rising cost, issues with actual like use of your data, security of your data, and who has my data. And the fact is that, and even ChatGPT, OpenAI is talking about advertising and selling your data on that piece. So and with also Claude training on your data, even if you say no, and they've already been caught with a lot of these big companies. So if you're not moving to something private, give us a call, reach out. We'd be happy to implement that for you.
Hmm.
Not our first one, but we have a very overpowered system that you can get, that you can control your data.
Well, thank you for that, Sam. And I have a question for the audience now. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What's one part of your business that AI should handle? And then what's one part of your business that it's probably better to keep it human? I think that's a valuable question. I'd love to hear your comments. Leave your answer in the chat, or leave us a comment if you're watching this after we're offline. But we'd love to hear from you. This is a live show. Part of why we're here is to answer questions. So if you have any, leave them for us. Let us know. We'll be happy to address them here on the show live. All right, Sam, I'm going to switch it up a
10
little.
p.m. phone calls. Sorry, I had to give my answer. Phone calls after hours, especially in the middle of the night, are what I like AI for the most. That's my personal opinion.
Um,
You can talk to my chat bot after hours.
yeah, yeah, I love it. Sam, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit because I just love pulling the lever. So
Okay.
let's switch it up a little bit. We're gonna pull the lever now. For all of you who don't know, we play this game called Pull the Lever. There's three big levers in business. It's time, money, or people. What do you think is the big issue here? What is the lever to pull in this situation?
So to break it down, there's basically you almost have to. It's you can only really pull one, and I know that for this game you can only pull one, either time, money, or people. The reality is that the intelligence lives in your people that you
Yes.
have, but you got to spend money on to be able to get that, and you've got and then but it takes time for the both of them to happen. So I think this is only time will tell, but I would say this really funnels down to like where am I spending my money. You really have to pay attention to where you're spending your money because uh, lazy. I think there's a lot of lazy money here. So I'm gonna call it money, and we're seeing that not only for the spend of these AI companies that like they're in the red. They're spending more than they're making, and they're doing that on purpose, which is crazy talk in my opinion. And then for your own business, there's a lot of risk that are going to like, well, so I've got another competitor. Okay, well, I can go. That competitor can go and copy you. You're only going to be 3 months behind. Well, I have a better sales team, better marketing. I can go ahead and just beat you out, and your competitive edge is now gone, even if you're a few months ahead of me.
Or I can just hire your people, pay them more, and
Which
get
is
all
what
those
we talked
trade
about
secrets.
yesterday. So
Yeah.
I think this is really coming down to a money problem because it really technology I see as an enablement problem.
Mm.
They're enabling their people to work faster, but if you're not enabling your people to work faster and be more effective in the right directions, you're going to be blowing through all of your budget plus some. And the amount of money that you're going to spend. Facebook did it in hundreds of millions of dollars and was like, we should probably stop. So it is happening right now. It's a money problem, or so in
Mm.
this case.
Man, oh,
For AI.
I could literally make an argument for any of the three here. I could say, well, you got to have the right people in your business to develop the AI, to develop all this, make all the systems talk to each other, and aggregate the data and handle it properly and keep it clean and all that stuff. Like that's important. And then we have, the money side of things. Like all this costs money, and I hear your point. And then time, you also have technology is allowing you to accomplish more in less time. And so then it begs the question, what do you do with that extra time to create value? And so I could really make, honestly, I can make arguments for any of them. I'm going to say that I agree with you that it's a money issue ultimately. You need to know how to allocate your money, towards your people, towards this technology, and do it in a way that's efficient, that's focused, that's moving everybody in the right direction. You're not spinning your wheels. You're not blowing a bunch of money on a project you didn't really need to do. And so, um, yeah, I'm going to say money as well. I agree with you.
Yeah, and it really falls down to the enablement. We look at business from 12 aspects for those that don't know, and we showed that in our last episode about midway through. And technology is one of those that we consider an enablement. It's 1/3 of the entire business. There are other things that are enablement, like leadership. As from leadership, you're enabling your people to do great things.
Right.
You're directing the cash flow in the business, and you're spending time and intentionality with them and figuring out, okay, where are we actually spending your time to increase, drive revenue, drive goals, hit our targets, etc. But again, technology is an enablement of what's already there. If you have nothing there, it doesn't matter. But this is why I think the spending of money is very important. Leadership can be one of those where it's more people focused, but technology on this in this case is more enablement for those people and giving them more efficient and effective time. So in this case, it's going to be money.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. And leadership is, like you said, another great piece. Like, leaders should be making sure that their people have the tools they need to be successful, that they have the authority to make the decisions. They're empowered to make those decisions. Leadership is also it's so important for leaders to set the vision, to tell everybody where they're working, why it's important, what direction they need to go in, and cast that vision. And so I think that's a great lens to think through things, is enablement. Sam, before we get into our next story, I want to remind everybody that this is a live show. Tuesday through Thursday, we go live. We have a conversation. If you appreciate this conversation, if this has challenged your thinking or helps you see something bigger than what you've considered previously, go ahead and hit the like. Go ahead and subscribe. Share it with somebody that needs to hear this conversation. We'd love to have you here. We'd love to converse with you. So go ahead and do that now. Sam, for our second topic, we're going to talk about how people are asking for AI discounts now. So
Okay.
so a third of research study was done. A third of agencies have been asked for an AI discount, because AI is compressing deliverable timelines by 3 and 4 times on average. So the same team absorbs more work faster, and yet the producers haven't seen they haven't seen an increase in 3 or 4 times the amount of profit, but they're able to accomplish more. And roughly a third of agencies have already had requests, explicit requests, asking for discounts because you got more done in a shorter amount of time. And people are really rethinking the way they bill, their fee structures, what they look like, and the billable hour, charging for your time, really seems to be at risk here.
So, I will say that I think again, I think this is the same mid-market issue that we were talking through of like, okay, well, cheap versus more expensive, and the reality is that there's this tap into the market of the specialized intelligence in a very consumeristic market that we live in, especially in the United States. So what I will say is that if you're just providing general consulting and it's like, all right, yeah, I got this. You're going to become less valuable in the fact that someone's for the clients that are looking to nickel and dime already, and I think there's going to be a compression there. I do think we're going to, because of this, we're going to see the rise of platforms, and I've actually already seen a few of them. There was one specifically built for just consultants to be able to put their intelligence on, which I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool. But at the same respect, um, who's to say that they're not going to use my information and be able to build cooler things? And I think there's definitely data play behind the scenes there.
Yeah.
So the reality is that if I can get things three or four done 3 or 4 more times faster, how valuable is that to the actual marketplace, to my buyer? So if you can get 2, 3, 4, 5x on the return from that whatever I'm giving you, does it really matter if you're asking for a discount?
Yeah,
That's my point. So if I
that's a great point, and I
yeah.
think you need to communicate your value, help people to see the value that you bring, and it doesn't really, it's actually a benefit to you if you get it faster, if you get the information you need, and you get the deliverable, whatever it is. Maybe it's you're working with a marketing agency, maybe you're working with some other kind of service to get some kind of information or market research or whatever it might be. The issue is if you get that thing done faster, it's a benefit to you. Now you can move with more intelligence. Like I'm thinking about FedEx. If I want my package sooner, I can buy a higher tier of FedEx. I can do overnight or 2 day over, 2 day or whatever it is, and I don't have to wait 10 days for my package to get here. And I pay more for that, or they charge me more for that. And so it's 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 valuable to get your information or whatever you need you're paying for faster, but
Hmm.
how you position that is really important. And so many people have built their pricing model around how many hours. Well, we spent this many hours on this thing, and and the fact is, AI is eroding your ability to bill a bunch of hours. Now you can get the same amount of work done faster, and clients are expecting it. If you're not using AI, you should be, and they're like, what? Why are you taking so long? You could accomplish this so much faster had you been more focused and using the right tools.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, the reality is that these tools are going to be wildly important for these business owners. And if I'm thinking through, like, what lever I would pull, again, like, if we're seeing the rise of these compression, I'm going to see the more of the compression of the timelines than I am of the. I'm going to see the compression of timelines for deliverables versus the hourly billing. So if you're like, yeah, I bill, fractionally from an hourly standpoint, well, it's like, what are you actually getting done? I want to see X amount more because you're enabled, and I want you to be able to deliver that. And depending on who your client is, I think that's going to be highly important. Again, this is, the client, especially when you're seeing asks like that from a sales perspective, it really comes down not to a money problem, not to a time problem. It comes down to a people problem. And this, or I would say the origin of this. So if I had to pull the lever, because I know you like to do that right after the story now,
Yep.
but if I was to pull the lever, I would say that's going to be a people problem because you haven't clearly communicated your value, and what the actual outcomes are, which is what I call RAS, results as a service, or outcomes as a service, however you want to call it. So, results as a service is basically saying you're going to get X. This is our process to get you there. Do you want it? Yes, I will pay X. Great. And then you run through it and you're like, there's a set expectation, there's a set cost, and how you're going to get there versus the we're going to charge by the hour. No, the amount of people that want to do that on a business piece don't necessarily want that like they used to.
Mm. So I'm going to disagree with you and say it's a money problem. Ultimately,
Okay.
it's a money problem. Fundamentally, AI is lowering costs, and you need to, if you're pricing wrong, then your mode is in serious trouble. Your business model is in serious trouble. So you need to think through how to price. And I agree with you that it's a results as a service. And if you don't pivot your pricing model, you're going to see margin shrink, and things are not going to go well for you. So with that, I would love to hear from the audience. What's your take on all of this? Where does value come from? How are you pricing? Have you shifted your pricing? We'd love to hear from you. Let us know. Ultimately, it's I believe about being strategic in your thinking, in your pricing model, and if if you're here and you've heard something interesting, we've provoked you to think differently about your business, we'd love to hear from you. This is a live show. Tuesday through Thursday, we go live. And this has been a pleasure. We got to cut this episode a little bit short for some other competing issues. But Sam, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much. And for all our audience, keep building that moat.
Take care, y'all.